Hi, you're very welcome to the Filum Show. I'm Mike Sheridan, joined by just Deirdre Malumbi this week, but also off camera. You looked hurt there. I was like, just Deirdre Malumbi, and you were like,
oh yeah,
I'm here too.
I am here. Rude.
You are most certainly here, David, producer Dave. But there's no Brian Lloyd this week in case people were wondering why it was so quiet. But there's something I want to talk about with Brian, and I haven't actually brought this up off air, but I think we need to discuss it. And producer Dave, this would have been well before your time, but within your time in the past few years.
Okay.
So there's a show called The Big Bang Theory, and Brian Lloyd wrote one of his customary hot takes on that show a couple of years ago, saying how much he hated it. Brian mentioned last week that he got death threats. That was what he got death threats for. Well, that was one of the reasons why Brian got death threats. Well, I occasionally I'll give him death threats on a bi-weekly basis, depending on what he comes out with. But yeah, he got actual death threats for this because the piece went viral and was picked up by I think Yahoo or something like that. So there was a lot of US views on the piece, and people then found him on Facebook, found out where he went to college before for some reason. I don't know, maybe they wanted to do a background check. Anyway, Brian came out about a year ago. We need to find the tweet, about a year and a half ago, and said that he believed. He said if the Big Bang Theory was cancelled, Brian M. Lloyd was going to run down Great Strand Street naked. He said he would do that, and nobody's brought this up. So
have you been sitting on this for?
I've been sitting on this because Brian's not here. So I was going to. It would have been probably better to throw on while he was here. But I'd say he's probably going to listen to this. He's off on Hollabobs with his missus in Porto.
Yeah, true.
So
you'll miss the sound of our voices.
He will miss the sound of our voices,
especially me,
especially you, because you have a lovely voice.
Thank you.
And a lovely LinkedIn picture as well. So yeah, I think we need to gang up on Brian and make him run nude down a somewhat dodgy. We say Great Strand Street because that's where the old office was.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure where that is.
Have you seen Dublin Old School? That's where
no.
a lot of the drug. It's where
it's
a lot
not
of drug
the most
attractive
streets. Yeah,
it's
kind of manky.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, that's a polite word for it. Love the time there. Had character though, David. Right, I had character. Okay, so we'll move on to the reviews. There's only one review this week.
Yes.
Happytime Murders is out, but it was screened very, very late. Brian reviewed it for the site, and myself and yourself didn't have a chance to get to it, which by all accounts is probably a positive thing because it is not getting good reviews.
No, not at all. I think Brian gave it 1.5 stars, which is pretty bad.
He's devoid of joy, though.
Yeah, but I don't think I've seen one positive review for this anywhere. Like even like the negative ones keep on coming up in my Twitter feed and everything. Some people are saying it's the worst film they've seen in years, the worst film of the year. It's just not funny. It's very crude. It's like inappropriate, but not in the right ways. It's not kind of as challenging or as like subversive as it thinks it is, and just basically got it wrong. So unfortunately,
it's obviously just from the trailer at least. It's puppets cursing and just being kind of disgusting.
Yeah,
the trailer was really funny.
Yeah.
So if that's the type of humor that it carries forward, then I'm still going to go and see it.
Yeah, I do want to see it at some point, but at the same time, I'm like, no one seems to have a positive take on this so far. No one. Bad. So it must be bad. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing at least if one review comes out that's praising it.
It's at 22% on Rotten Tomatoes. So some people did, but that's a pretty lowly.
Yeah. Oh. It's still not good.
Melissa McCarthy's on a bit of a poor run. As of late, I think the last movie she made a couple of movies where her husband Ben Falcone has directed them.
Yeah. Life of the Party, I think, was the last one. It was very. I saw that one actually. It's very. There's just not much to it. It's like, oh, she's a cringy mom. She's saying all these inappropriate things about her daughter.
That ha wasn't real. You took that sarcasm from producer Dave. That's like something you do.
Thank you.
There you are now. Seminal. You're seminal. Influential.
I am.
There we are now. Okay, so let's move on to an actual review of a movie you've seen, Dee. Searching is John Cho.
Or Cho? I'm not
100%. Excuse our pronunciation, or my pronunciation at least. It's been getting phenomenal reviews.
Yes, it's really good.
Super intriguing setup, right? What's it about?
So essentially, setup-wise, it's about this, and it's not the next Taken, because everyone's like, oh, that's totally Taken. It is not Taken. So essentially, this father, his 16-year-old daughter goes missing, and the only way that he can find her is to basically track her digital footprints online. And the setup of this is very similar to a horror movie we would have seen a few years ago called Unfriended, and actually the sequel to it, Unfriended Dark Web, came out this year. And both of those films, I think especially the sequel, actually got quite good reviews. But essentially the whole film is shot, you see the whole film through screens. So phone screens when they're making calls, or through like Skype or FaceTime, different things like that, or you see it through laptop screens. So you see him actually like go onto her Facebook profile and kind of create these files and all of these other things. And that's how the entire film is done, or sometimes on like TV screens, you know, for like say news reports and stuff like that. So it's a really, really interesting setup, but as well it's just a really great thriller. Like it's genuinely like edge of your seat stuff. I went to an evening screening of this with like, you know, I think it was nearly kind of sold out. I think it was pretty packed audience anyway, and people were genuinely like gasping and whispering and getting excited, and I think that's always a good sign. Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah,
it's that's one of those I suppose plot devices that could go very much either way. Where, you know, if that's all the movie has to rely on, then it's going to get old pretty fast. But there's obviously more to it. Yeah,
that's just it, and I really like the way that it kind of like sets up the father and daughter's relationship, even through the kind of ways that they communicate with each other through these devices. It's really kind of nicely done, you know, because the father kind of realizes more and more how little he actually knows his daughter, and that kind of makes it less and less likely is he actually going to find her in the end. We also have Deborah Messing in this film. She would be known exactly as Grace from Will and Grace. She's good as well. It's interesting to see her in a more dramatic role, but definitely the film belongs to John Cho. Who people would recognize, of course, as Sulu in the new Star Trek movies. So it's great.
Is it a horror or is it a thriller? Because it's set up like it's kind of a horror.
It's more thriller.
Is it one of those like I know it's not Jason Blum, but it's not one of his. But isn't there another? Is it like produced by one of those small horror houses? Or
I think it's no, it's not produced by
Screen Gems. It's Sony anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I watched it again recently. I went to see it when it first came out, which is Don't Breathe. Have you seen Don't Breathe?
I haven't, no, but I've heard great things.
Have you seen it, Producer Dave?
Do you know, I actually started watching it.
It's on Netflix,
I stopped watching it.
Oh, were you scared?
No, I wasn't scared enough, I'd say.
It sounds like you were scared in your line.
I never learned how to lie because I'm from Cork.
Cork people tell nothing but the truth.
We only tell the truth.
That's it.
We are a kind people.
Unless you're talking about Roy Keane.
What do you mean?
Just saying.
He's a god amongst men.
There you are now. So why did you stop watching it?
I just wasn't overly enthralled by it. And maybe I just wasn't in the appropriate mood for such a film. I enjoyed the premise, which is why I watched it.
Yeah.
But it just didn't grab me. I'm sure I'll get back to it at some point.
It sounds like kind of more like a slow burner, and maybe we're.
Do you know what? I think it's interesting because I think they might be from the same shingle. You know, I'm guessing that they're from the same shingle because it is one of those kind of. There's not really a hook to it, although the hook being that, like, if there is one, that burglars break into a house, the guy who owns the house is blind, and they think it's going to be an easy. Oh, this is just going to be an easy score. But the whole story is told from the burglar's point of view. And it ends up turning into this kind of horror movie. So the guy who directed it is directing the new Girl with the Girl with the Earring.
Oh, Girl in the Spider's Web?
Girl in the Spider's Web. So there's about 15 of those movies. And you know what? He's so David Fincher. How he moves the camera, the tension. It's similar to Panic Room, even in the setup of how some of the characters are. And I think there's a little bit of a harkening back to, what's his name? Jared Leto. There's a bit of a harkening back to him. But anyway, I digress too much, Deirdre. I apologise. But it just kind of reminded me of that these movies that cost probably like, because this is doing very well at the box office. It's been released at specialty box office. Now, I think that was made for less than $10 million. Did 150 million worldwide. Do you see this movie breaking out?
Yeah, I understand that this one is similar. I'm not sure of its exact budget, but my understanding is it was quite a modest budget. So yeah, and I mean, even we were talking about this before, the fact that it won the audience award at Sundance, I think is always a good sign.
Huge, right? You know, the audience responded to it really positively.
Exactly, yeah. It is a film that you should go see with an audience and go see on the big screen. I know that's kind of such a cliche to say, go see it on the big screen, but really there is, like, the movie experience of it is so much more.
Do we know who directed it?
Other people. His name escapes me now. Producer Dave's going to look it up for me.
Google it. To Google with Producer Dave.
Yeah, my understanding is he just had one other kind of feature before this. And this is kind of his first big gig. But he's done a great job with it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does.
You used
next.
to see that back in the day where directors would have made their way into films via kind of horror genre picks.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a nice little, because they're generally quite cheap, and it's a nice little way of exploring whether or not they can make a film, I suppose.
Well, I mean, so many major directors have taken that route, like the likes of even Peter Jackson, Sam Mendes. They started off in horror, you know?
That's very well. Sam Mendes. So you think of Sam Raimi?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I meant.
I I think Sam Mendes' first movie was we won an Oscar for American Beauty. Did she?
Sure?
Yeah. Well, he's a theatre background.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time because it was DreamWorks had a big year that year because it was American Beauty and Gladiator. So everybody's like, "Oh, get them, get Steven Spielberg and all the."
That's not a bad start either.
It's not a bad start, is it?
Yeah. You should probably just quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, Kevin
That's
Spacey probably should have just quit while he was ahead as well.
Oh dear.
Do you know what? It's ruined them. Like movies certainly where he was a star in. It's like, you look back at them now and it has dirtied the bib a little bit.
Perhaps.
What were you going to say there, Dave?
It's all
Sorry?
objective, really, isn't it?
It really is. Look, you can't see his sly
The
smile.
director's name, forgive my pronunciation, is Anish Shaganti.
Well, in fairness, that's why I couldn't
Yeah,
remember it.
yeah. We struggle with the pronunciations. The names at the best of the time if they're not spelled out phonetically.
And
He also had Adventure Wisconsin in 2012.
yeah, maybe that was the one.
What's his background? Can you see there? Is he on music videos?
Couldn't really tell you. No, there's a bunch of films and stuff. Yeah, I suppose as you'd expect. From a director.
Fair.
Okay, so it's interesting to see whether this one is how well it's going to do in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because it's a strange time of year, isn't it? August is really and the kind of early September you're kind of in that weird zone between blockbuster movies and prestige films.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that this film is great. Like, I would put it up there with like even A Quiet Place, just in terms of like, just in terms of, I love a good thriller. You know, I love one that you can just get totally immersed in, and one that has your like, you know, heart pounding and you get really excited, and ones that I feel are like quite innovative in a way. And I feel like this one is that. Now, I know, like I said, that Unfriended has kind of used this particular format before, but I've never seen it used kind of to this extent, you know, to kind of create emotion as well as drama and thrills, you know. So I think that it's a really great film, and it's been getting great reviews. People have been comparing it to Hitchcock. People have been saying it's a game changer. I think it's a really good one for people to go and check out.
Which is one of those that it costs so little to make that studios are going to be like, look, our losses here are going to be minimal at most.
I feel like a lot of films are probably going to like kind of go off the back of it and maybe do copycat versions of it, which I think is going to happen with A Quiet Place as well, probably in the coming years, because it's just it's a formula that obviously works, you know.
A Quiet Place was like, it was about $16-17 million, but the effects were so good in it.
I know, yeah. I don't know how.
It's no matter some movies can do that with like very little budget, and then others are, you know, 100 and something million on their shit.
They look crap.
How does that happen? Like,
I don't know.
Okay, so that's it for reviews wise this week. So there's a lot of movie news this week. There's a lot of cool breaking stories.
Yes.
So do you want to? We just stand here perfectly still while Charlie plays some music. You dance.
I am dancing.
Dave's dancing. There we go. Sticks in the head, doesn't it? That Pearl and Dean music. It sticks in the head.
I enjoy it.
So this one is fresh, hot off the presses just this morning in. Alec Baldwin is joining the cast of the Joker movie. So we know that this film was greenlit last month. We know that sorry again for pronunciation.
Joaquin Phoenix is right. You're right.
Joaquin?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Grant. Joaquin Phoenix is playing the titular role. Other cast members who've been confirmed so far include Robert De Niro and Zazie Beetz, who I love. I just think she is so
Deadpool
cool.
2, Atlanta. She's
amazing.
Awesome.
She's so cool. Also, Mark Maron of Glow is going to be in the film, but Alec Baldwin is the latest to be confirmed, and he is going to play, and this is quite an interesting twist on it, because it's like, oh, is Bruce Wayne going to be in it? But he is playing Thomas Wayne, who is Bruce Wayne, aka Batman's father. And what's also interesting about the inclusion of his character is the fact that, well, I suppose he'd be best known in kind of the Batman canon as, you know, being infamously murdered outside the theatre. And traditionally in the early comics, he was murdered by the character of Joe Chill, who we would have seen, remember, Batman Begins, and we see him go through court and Bruce Wayne goes after him and everything. But in the 1989 Batman from Tim Burton, it's actually Joker who kills Mr. and Mrs. Wayne. So will they kind of take that route and show like maybe there's a relationship there, but maybe it goes wrong? We have no idea.
That's what that type of casting indicates, though, doesn't it? That if it's going to be an origins story as well, and you're going to cast a big name like Alec Baldwin in there, that there's going to be a reason for it.
Yeah.
So can we see Joaquin murdering poor Alec?
Well, I haven't seen You Were Never Really Here, but I've heard that he's no stranger to killing gruesomely in that film.
He's such a good actor, isn't he?
He's so amazing.
He's such a good actor, and he's got this way. I think the movie made with Paul Thomas Anderson, I know he's made a couple of them, but the movie made The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it just he's had this weird physicality in it and Amy Adams, or he had this weird where he had this like he was almost like he had a spinal problem or something. So for the whole movie, he's got this weird. Like that must have messed him up during production to do that. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with that character.
Yes.
I know it's Todd Phillips directing it, who did Old School and The Hangover. He shoots a gorgeous movie, shoots a really nice movie. I'm intrigued with Mark Maron's casting as well.
Yeah.
I just finished the second season of Glow last night.
Oh, it's a great show, isn't it?
It's such a fun show.
Yeah.
It really is. And Maron is great in that. Have you watched Glow, Dave?
I have not, no.
It's great. It's very good. You should watch it. You should binge watch that now with your girlfriend.
I don't watch a huge amount of TV shows. There's a lot of that's a real investment of my time.
Yeah,
like
I'm kind of the same.
I'd rather watch a movie and then talk about them with
none of it's Don't Breed. You wouldn't even make it through that. It's only an hour and a half long.
I'm very busy.
You are. You produce a lot of stuff.
I do.
Very busy man. But yeah, like he's incredible at what he does. Maron is like, if anybody listens to his podcast and listens to WTF, he seems like he's just playing himself.
Yeah.
Or he's playing a version of himself, but he's great at it.
Yeah.
You know, he's just this kind of surly, miserable swine. With a kind of a heart of gold. There's kind of a hint of gold in there. So the budget for this is $55 million.
Yeah.
Which might sound like a hefty sum, and it is, but comparatively to any movies in the superhero realm, or the comic book adaptation realm, that's not a lot at all.
Oh yeah, I mean the way it's being described by Warner's, and they've been quite specific about this, is that it's a dark character study akin to Taxi Driver more so than a superhero movie. So I suppose, it's kind of, I think it'll be interesting to see them go a bit, off the grain and do something a bit different. And I think that Joaquin Phoenix is a great choice because he can really carry a movie, and he's just so intense in every role that he does that you're just fascinated to watch him and see what he does next, because you don't know, he could just go mad all of a sudden. You just wouldn't know,
because he turned down Doctor Strange. He was offered Doctor Strange, and Brian interviewed him for something, and Brian asked him about turning down Doctor Strange. It was before it had come out, and the script could have had multiple incarnations like between him turning it down and the film coming out. So he kept Brian kind of a generic answer on camera, and then Brian said it to him after. He goes, "Oh, like why did you turn down?" And he's like, "Yeah, the script was shit."
Yeah.
So it must be decent. There must be something in here for him.
Yeah, that's just it. And I mean, it's the writer behind it. Just incidentally, I have lost my place.
Scott Silver.
Scott Silver, who would have done 8 Mile and The Fighter. So he's a good writer.
Martin Scorsese producing.
Executive producing.
Brought to you by Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
It'd be interesting. Do you know when that was going to come out? Probably late next year.
I think actually they're planning on a quick enough turnover. I think they're planning on October 2019, which means it's probably, again, departing from the superhero genre, in that I don't think it's going to be very effects heavy if they're planning on that quick a turnover.
With that amount of money as well.
Exactly.
It's going to be tricky to do. I suppose sequences, at least if they're planning on doing action sequences.
That's just it, yeah.
Okay, what else have we got?
So why did Danny Boyle really quit Bond?
Ooh, this has been the hot topic. This has been a hot topic, and we recorded the show last week before that news broke. And we were struggling for movie news last week. We're like, shit.
I know, and then that happened, and it's like,
Then the show goes out, and we're like, damn it.
Yeah. So obviously, originally the reasons why Danny Boyle had quit Bond 25 was creative differences.
Well, he did quit. Like this, so this is everything we're hearing now. He did walk away.
Yeah, that he did walk away. Initially, the Telegraph were saying that it was because of casting clashes with Daniel Craig. It was unclear about who wanted and who didn't want this actor, whose name is Thomas Cott. But whatever way it was working out, if you're, having arguments with the Bond and disagreeing about him, that's not exactly a good sign. But the latest report suggests that Boyle quit because essentially Barbara Broccoli, who's been a long time producer on the Bond franchise, wanted to kill off Bond and have him reincarnated in a Doctor Who-esque way.
Boo, boo, boo.
How would that have... I mean, is there wires been crossed here, do you think? How would that have worked? Bond isn't a sci-fi movie.
I don't know. Yes.
True. Moonraker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised about the whole killing off Bond thing. I mean, I think that they're probably kind of planning that anyway. Although I would really like, okay, spoiler alert for the Bourne series, if they did something like Bourne Ultimatum-esque.
Yeah.
If like you thought he was gone, but then actually he like comes out of the water or something.
That was awesome the way they did that.
It was so well done.
The Moby soundtrack just kicks in, he moves for a second and you're like, yes!
Oh, it's amazing.
And then
It's
Jeremy
great.
Renner comes in and you're like, no bueno. No bueno, Jeremy Renner. That didn't work at all.
He did come back for a fourth one, but I think we can just write that off and just say they should have left it at Ultimatum. They should have left it there. Anyway, yeah, but I mean, how do they like want to... Well, it wasn't reincarnate the word they used. They said regenerate. So I suppose the whole idea is that, you know, as we've been discussing before, this is where the whole idea of like the new Bond or Bond in like another form, be it like kind of, you know, a black Bond or whatever.
Or a woman even.
Or a woman, you know, God forbid.
Well, they're producing
That was
that.
so
They're producing
sarcastic.
that. The rhythm section. They're producing. Barbara Broccoli's producing that movie, and that was shot in Ireland with Blake Lively, and that's apparently like quite Bond in tone and stuff. And it's an Eon production.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd always been that idea kind of behind Bond that, you know, people had their theories and stuff about the character. And, you know, I suppose Skyfall really went into detail and Spectre went into detail about explaining where Bond came from. And you know, his parents and, you know, spoiler alert, his brother and all that stuff, his dad and all that crack. So there's a universe around Bond, and then there was these theories that like 007 is just the number that each agent is given, and James Bond is the name that each agent is given. So it makes sense in that sense. I thought Spectre. I remember talking on the old movie show ages ago about how I thought Spectre was the last one Daniel Craig was going to do because it was so bookended. Like the end.
Well,
of it
I mean,
was
he was
kind of,
saying it was the last one he was going to do. You know,
it was just the money. Do you think?
it was just the money.
He's a great Bond.
Yeah,
He's a really good Bond.
but they're giving him like 50 million or something. Would
Are
you
they?
really turn it down for that? Well, that was like the last rumor. That was like, you know, of what was it, last autumn or something when he said he was
There was going to be
gonna
two.
do it,
He was going to do two more for like silly money
yeah.
because it takes up 2 years of his life. Okay, so Boyle's gone. Who do you see direct? I know there was a bit of a short list. Matthew Vaughn's name's been mentioned, which is cool.
Matthew Vaughn's name's been mentioned. I think that he would be a good choice.
director.
Jan de Mange has been mentioned now.
71.
He did 71, and he's doing White Boy Rick, actually, which is a film coming out, with Matthew McConaughey. Apparently he's the front runner, but I mean, I feel like we haven't really seen enough from him as director to know that he can handle a Bond movie. Although I would also argue that if the choice goes to someone like him, it would be because the studio know that because he's, you know, that less experienced as a director, he's going to be much easier for the studio to mold.
Yeah, that's very true. And that had generally been what had happened with the Bond movies before, where they'd hire journeyman directors who had made whatever, like Roger Spotswood did a Pierce Brosnan when he made Stop on My Mom Will Shoot. Yeah. You know, like people who could just get the budget in over time. And then I think Vic Armstrong was the second unit director, big stunt man, and he would cover all the second unit action stuff. But it had moved with Sam Mendes. It had really moved on from there.
I know. I don't want them to take a step back now.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I think that they should be giving it to someone like Matthew Vaughn.
He's got real
we'll have to
panache.
see.
Matthew Vaughn's got real panache as a director. I think the last Kingsman wasn't as good as the first. It was grand, but the first Kingsman, kick ass. I loved Stardust. I really loved it. Have you seen Stardust?
I do. I know people love it, but I just think it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Some people seem to really, really like it. But I'm not mad about it.
I thought it was sweet. And X-Men First Class, obviously, as well.
Oh, yeah. I
so
love
he's
that,
handled the big budget stuff. He is apparently one of the reasons why Daniel Craig got cast as James Bond. Because, he made Layer Cake.
Oh,
and there's a whole
of
sequence
course,
in Layer Cake with Daniel Craig kind of looking like James Bond. And Matthew Vaughn had said previously before that he came as close as you can get to making a Bond movie with Daniel Craig. So I would,
it would be nice if it kind of came full circle.
Wouldn't
then.
it?
Yeah, that would be nice.
That'd be lovely. Maybe they're in negotiations. The news better not break about who's going to direct this.
24 hours.
Are they going to push the movie back? They're going to have to, because they were going to release it next November, weren't they?
I haven't heard anything about it yet. I think that for now, production is kind of halted, you know, because that's exactly what the issues were when Bull was working on it. That there were kind of, you know, the writers were going to and front, the cast and crew didn't know where they were going or what was going on. So, I mean, there hasn't been any official announcement that it's been moved, I suppose, because, they don't want to admit how much shit it's actually in.
Yeah, I mean, how does a $200 million movie, whatever it's going to cost, probably more, how do you get to that point? I never understand how a director's hired, and there've been a back and forth about Danny Boyle coming on in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you get to a point where you're like, something as big as that, because John Hodges had written a script that Danny Boyle was happy with, and the previous two, Neil Purvis, I'm sorry, I can't remember the other chap's name, who have written most of the Craig Bond movies.
Yeah, I think they've written pretty much all of them.
Yeah, or been involved in the plots or whatever. So Boyle was obviously bringing his own take to this. But how do you get to that point where it's a massive thing, like we're going to kill James Bond?
Yeah.
Comes up like in a meeting, like Barbara's on the jacks and is thinking, do you know what? And then just text Danny Boyle and he's like, nah, I'm out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I dramatise that scenario.
Or like, would they not obviously, but would they not have been talking about this in much earlier stages before actually confirming Danny Boyle is directing? I don't know. It seems very messy to me. Or did they think they would convince Danny Boyle? I mean, like, he had a long-running feud with Ewan McGregor. He strikes me as a very stubborn man who's very got his ideas.
They made up though in the end, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they did. But I mean, it took years.
Because they talked about that on Graham Norton.
Yeah.
And it was really sweet because, well, Ewan McGregor wanted to be in the beach. Have you heard this story?
I have not, no.
Ewan McGregor, so basically producer Dave, Ewan McGregor thought he was going to be cast in the beach because it was late 90s, mid to late 90s, and it was Leonardo DiCaprio's first movie that he shot post-Titanic, so he was like an absolute superstar. And Danny Boyle was directing, he was doing well off the back of Trainspotting as well and Shallow Grave, and had apparently promised Ewan McGregor the lead role in it, and then Leonardo DiCaprio was like, oh, I want to do it, and they were like, sorry, Ewan McGregor, he's going to... So they fell out over that, but when they made the second Trainspotting movie, they became besties again, and they were actually really sweet about it on Graham Norton.
Yeah, it was very sweet. But I mean, they were fighting for years.
Yeah.
Like years and years. They only made up like shortly before Trainspotting 2 is my understanding. So basically feuding since just after Trainspotting to the new Trainspotting. Isn't that like, I don't know, a decade or something?
Yeah, they had a lot of those grudges. Just ignoring each other at the Golden Globes and shit, probably.
Ooh.
Maybe they just didn't cross paths.
That's what I was going to say, but generally you would, I suppose, for award ceremonies and the like. Not that Ewan McGregor's been nominated for anything recently, unless I'm missing something there.
Zing.
So it's going to be in the sequel to The Shining, so we'll see what happens
true.
there.
And
that'll be a big one for him.
And Christopher Robin, which we weren't massive. Well, which Brian wasn't a massive fan
I
of.
saw it last weekend, actually. I wasn't mad about it. I'd have to agree with everything.
You're Disney mad, so.
No, I'd have to agree with Brian on basically everything he said, and that it was just...
That. Agree with him. Takes too much joy in it.
I'm going to go see it, and I'll prove you all wrong. There.
My friend was very defensive about it. She was quite upset that I didn't like it. Really? She was like, it was a perfect childhood movie. Shut up. I was like, okay.
If they're going to go down, right? Okay, so if the Bond producers are going to go down, which I don't think they will. I think there's too much pressure on them to make Bond in some way different.
Yeah.
There's a show on BBC. I watched the last 20 minutes of it last night called Bodyguard. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
Nope.
Big BBC series. I think it's a 2 or 3 part series. And Richard Madden from Game of Thrones on Ibiza. That movie Ibiza is basically the bodyguard, and he's protecting the Secretary of Defence in the UK, and he's very good. Like he has that action. He has those action chops. So I think I was surprised to see that his name hadn't been booted around when some other kind of, not lesser names, but like kind of people of an equal footing would have been, what's his name, Poldark, Aidan Turner. I like Aidan Turner. He's good.
Yeah.
But he's not really a superstar. But I do think they're going to end up going down. They'd either cast a person of color, or they'll go and maybe even go nuts and cast a female.
I doubt that.
You just don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening. I think more likely, and I think it was you and Brian were talking about this last year, was maybe going for a younger Bond.
Yeah.
I think that's more likely than a female Bond. I think it'll be a while.
Yeah, we're still going to be. That movie's probably not going to come out now till 2020. So it's a while off, like.
Yeah.
Do you reckon it could be a thing of that they're looking at, like, say, the Marvel films and being jealous and wanting to do something huge, maybe?
Like have a universe.
Yeah, like, I mean, I would say the attitude towards James Bond now is that, like, it is an institution, but it's kind of fair to middling kind of thing. Like, like, there's not the same anticipation for a James Bond film that there would be for a Marvel film these days.
That's
so it's
true,
like maybe they're just looking at that and going, that should be James Bond kind of thing. And
Yeah, well, I mean, the last Bond I think did about 900 million globally. The one before that went over $1 billion. And
Yeah.
Spectre wasn't great.
Yeah.
Because Skyfall I think is superb. It's my favorite Bond movie. I thought Sam Mendes did an incredible job with it, and Christopher Doyle shot it as well. It's a stunning film. Apologies if I'm wrong on that, but I'm fairly certain he did. And Craig is a really great Bond. It's only the case is that they haven't been making money. I think there's so many fingers in the pie.
Yeah.
With that series that they cost that everybody has to get their cut, and Universal have it now. And I think that's where Danny Boyle came in. He's had a relatively long relationship with Universal. He directed Steve Jobs for them as well. So yeah, like it's a constant, like, isn't it? Even in kind of news sites where Idris Elba was kind of taking a piss for a while, saying he might be Bond, and then now it's the director merry-go-round again. So it just make the bleeding film already.
Yeah.
Let's just get on with it.
I'll do it.
Can you call somebody?
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I mean, they won't be any good.
Do you think Roy
but I'll
Keane would be a
call
good Bond?
someone. Oh, yeah. I think he'd be great.
Oh, dear
And
God.
Cork people do not lie, Deirdre. He said that at the start, and he genuinely thinks Roy Keane would be a good Bond.
I do think he'd be great.
Yeah.
Roy, if you're listening, throw your hat in the ring. But get us to the
Obviously
Euros
he's
first.
listening.
Yeah, get us to the Euros first. Then you can go make movies or whatever it is you want to do with your time.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Okay, Dee, what else we got?
So my very last news story, Oscar Isaac. Now this is very much in the rumorville. Apparently, supposedly,
Reportedly, Dee's like, I'm not sitting on the fence on this. And I'm not going to do something.
Oscar Isaac is being pursued for a role in the Batman. So the Batman has ended up kind of becoming quite a mess. Anybody who is a, movie fan / superhero geek who's been following news on the Batman has been aware that it's a bit of a shit show.
It really is. Well, the whole DC universe, because of Justice League. And
Yeah, but especially to do with like Ben Affleck's involvement with it, because initially he was going to direct in it, star in it, produce it. I feel like that gig from Little Britain,
Oh, yeah.
right? The theme
Oh,
tune,
yeah.
sing the theme tune. But no, that's initially what he was going to do,
And write it. I think he
and write
thought,
it. Yeah, and now he's not directing it anymore. I don't think he's even starring in it anymore. My understanding is he just has a producing credit. And poor Ben Affleck has apparently reportedly just gone into rehab. So, the whole thing is just not going well for him right now. So now, it's all up in the air, but apparently Warner Brothers has been speaking with Oscar Isaac about some role. There hasn't been an offer or anything yet, but apparently both parties were very pleased with how the meeting went. So Oscar Isaac could be in the running to play the Caped Crusader himself, Batman.
Do you think it's Batman he's been... Because Matt Reeves is directing, right? The Planet of the Apes guy.
Yeah.
Excellent director.
Yes.
He did a superb job with those movies. They're really underrated blockbusters.
Yeah.
He's like 5'8".
But sure, Tom Cruise is less
Not
than
Batman,
that.
though.
And he's but I suppose you can, smoke and mirrors, movie magic, as you call it.
Just shoot from a really low angle
Yeah.
for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily see Oscar Isaac as Batman, I suppose, but
You said you were a fan. You're a big fan of his.
I am a big fan. Yeah, he's great. Lovely singing voice. Yeah,
Why has he got a lovely singing voice?
because he can sing and it's nice. That's
Do you
why.
think of Inside Llewyn Davis or...
Yeah, Fare Thee Well is my favourite one from that film. And he wrote and sang Never Had from 10 Years on Netflix. And he sings it beautifully.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's quite the guitarist too.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wonder if he'll
Talented
compete
bastard.
with your Patrick Wilson for multi-talent.
We'll have to wait and
We'll
see.
have to see.
Patrick Wilson should have been Batman. Or
Oh,
Superman.
he could have been
He
a good
actually
Batman,
could.
It's really good.
especially with the whole
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
Yeah.
That would
Great
have been so
Watchmen.
clever.
That's probably what's holding him back.
Yeah, well, I think he's probably a bit too old now as well. But, sorry, Patrick.
Well, I mean, more likely in any case, it looks like Oscar Isaac would be in talks to play the supervillain who is apparently going to be the Penguin.
It's a
So,
very
yeah.
cluttered universe, isn't it? And you talk about the Joker movie there as well. And the
Yeah.
DC universe is... And Wonder Woman was such a success that it can go off and be its own thing now, I think, and occasionally dip back in if it needs to.
But I think that's what they're trying to do more of now,
Yeah.
especially with how poorly Justice League went. I think that they're realizing that it's better to invest a bit into those like individual properties. And I think that if Aquaman is a success come Christmas, they're just going to end up pursuing that more and more,
Yeah, hopefully it is James Wan. I think it looks fun as well.
I think it looks great. Yeah. I hope it's good. I really want it to be good.
I
I felt that way about Wonder Woman as well. I was like, please be good. And then it was amazing. So it was grand.
Yeah, Wonder Woman, despite being a big blockbuster and having, such weighty names attached and being a comic book movie, because everybody was so down on the DC universe, so it was deadly to see it just come out and overperform. But you know, I think when DC made that decision to go Batman versus Superman, they shit the bed. I think from that point onwards, and then there was no going back. They'd invested so much money, they invested everything in it, and either let Zack Snyder make the movie he wants to make or don't. And apparently his Justice League movie was a tad more coherent than what ended up being like a Joss Whedon directed, you know, special effects mess ultimately. And it's going to be a Batgirl movie as well.
Yeah. Although
Supergirl
that's still
movie.
in kind of, I mean, they're still very much in like development stages. I mean, there are like 50 ones in development. Like there's a Channing Tatum one as well.
Gambit,
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it'll depend on, you know, the success of these ones going forward. And I mean, like the Batman was supposed to be coming out next year, and now the earliest we're going to see it is 2020, just because all these movies are basically just ending up in development hell. They have like some really good ideas behind them, some good directors attached and stuff like that, and then they just don't know how to write the damn thing. I mean, it's the same with, it's exactly what happened with Bond 25. You know, it's like, how do we you know, write this?
You know where you want to go with the characters at the start, I would say.
Yeah.
And they did the Bond producers at least.
Well, Bond is a different one in that it's like, how do you wrap up the story, I suppose, as opposed to, you know, starting one in the first place. So
okay, let's move on to the revisit this week. Dee, you got you the pick this week.
Yeah.
You're weak for yourself for this one. What are we revisiting?
I picked Shrek. Yay!
It's a bit of an animated classic, this one, isn't it?
It is. I recently rewatched it on Netflix
good.
in preparation. Yes.
Good, you actually rewatched not like Brian Lloyd.
Yeah.
Does it hold up? What about because it's obviously it's CGI.
Yeah.
And I mean, when the first Shrek came out, there wasn't a huge amount of. You mean there were some, obviously that's where animation was going, but it wasn't a huge amount of just CGI animation.
Yeah.
There's still kind of a mix. Does it hold up?
Oh, it does. I mean, the only thing I would say about it is the animation itself has probably dated a bit. Like you watch it and it's almost, which you'd expect. I mean, you watch it and essentially what it looks like is that it hasn't completed animation yet. Like it's kind of like in the third stage of 5 or something, if you get what I mean. Like there's just not the same kind of definition and detail that you see. Like I find that if you've ever gone and watched the Toy Story trilogy in a row, 1, 2, 3, you definitely see the changes in the animation and how much more superior and complicated in quality it becomes between 1 and 3. Like it's a huge, huge difference. But yeah, you definitely, like I said, it has dated a bit in that way. But the humor, it's still so
really sharp
funny.
Script.
Yeah, I mean, like it's amazing, like how many nods and the fact that it's just a piss take of Disney, and still it's such a piss take of Disney and all those fairy tale movies that it still does, you know, quite a lot in. Like Christopher Robin is essentially another kind of childhood, you know, nostalgic fairy tale type story. So Disney is still very much invested in that. So the fact that DreamWorks have this like piss take of all of those conventions, I think is kind of brilliant. The reason why I was inspired even to see this, it's amazing how you see those little like, you know, extras come out over the years. Like remember how we were looking at whatchamacallit, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and we saw the tweet of the fact that Cynthia Nixon is actually walking in the background. Well, what inspired me to pick Shrek was because somebody shared this thing that they'd noticed in Shrek, which I never picked up on, and I'm actually going to get Charlotte to share the images, but it's so clever. So obviously it's populated by all of these fairy tale creatures and everything out, and at one point we see Mama Bear, Daddy Bear and Baby Bear all locked up in cages. This is when Lord Farquaad is, you know, taking them away. And then the next time we see Daddy Bear and Baby Bear, it's when they're sitting by the fire in the swamp, which is where they've been evicted to, and then Shrek goes off on his journey and everything. The next time you see Mama Bear, she's been killed and made into a rug in Lord Farquaad's castle, and I never ever picked up on that. It's so dark and genius.
It is quite dark. I actually do remember that.
It's like, it's seconds, you know?
Yeah, but to be fair, it was the fact that my younger sister, hello Maureen, watched that video at home, I would say twice a day for about 4 months. So I have that film imprinted on my brain. But yeah, that I loved how dark that was. That was great.
There's some great gags in it in general. Lord Farquaad, like John Lithgow does the voice. Yeah. And the gag where he's like, it's mirror, mirror. Yeah. And the mirror doesn't give him the answer he wants, so he has one of the lads smash a mirror in front of him. I remember pissing myself laughing at that in the cinema as a grown-up.
It's a very
Well, they've grown
bold
up.
film. There's another scene with Lord Farquaad again where he's lying like with his bare chest out, like, show me the princess, and then he very distinctly looks under the blanket, and you know what Lord Farquaad is doing.
You
The
little
children
pervert.
don't know what he's doing,
Yeah.
but we know what he's doing. It's so bold. And I mean, like, the opening scene is Shrek reading a fairy tale, and he's taking a shit. Like, how many cartoons open with that? It's ridiculous. It's brilliant.
It doesn't really happen anymore, does this? Like
Yeah.
ones that are made for kids. Would they get away with that nowadays in social media?
I don't
Somebody be
feel
outraged
so.
somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like DreamWorks, like even in films like The Road to El Dorado, there are some like really adult jokes in that, but they aren't as kind of, I don't know, subversive or as challenging or as bold as they used to be, like hiding in those jokes. I don't know whether like they've gotten too like scared to do that, or whether it really would affect, you know, the rating now. Although I think that like so much stuff goes over kids' heads. I mean, I remember watching Grease as a child, and then it was only when I watched it as a teenager, I was like, they just talk about sex constantly in this movie, don't they? Like, you don't realize it till you're older. So I wish that animated movies were still like they were in the good old days.
That's not
you
even
know?
animated movies. Like you look at a plot of American Pie, and it's lads like kind of betting who's going to get their hole first.
Well, that was an R-rated film
but
at
I mean,
the time.
I'm not saying it's made for kids, but like Porky's obviously did that in the 80s as well. And I just can't see a film like that being made nowadays.
I know, it's such a shame. Although we do have the Happytime Murders.
That's true.
If you consider that as the equivalent of that.
Maybe that's why people didn't like it. So we'll have to get to that and see what the crack is. I want to go see Black Klansman as well. I'm yet to see that. So what do we think for a revisit next week? Would you like to pick a revisit sometime, David?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Any film you'd like to talk about?
Yes, but you put me on the spot, so not right now.
We'll leave you time to ponder.
Who would you say is not necessarily your favourite, but who's one of your favourite actors?
One of my favourite actors. Oh golly, I'd be quite a fan of Denzel Washington. I'd have to say.
Dee met him.
Yeah, I did.
How was he?
Intense.
Sam Rockwell actually would be my favourite
Sam
actor.
Rockwell's awesome.
Oh yeah, a lot of people like him. Yeah, he's cool.
So what's
Love him in whatchamacallit, Seven Psychopaths.
And
I
Moon.
love
that,
Seven
yeah.
Psychopaths. It's
Have
in
you
my
seen
top
Moon?
10 films. I've seen Moon, yeah, loved it.
We could talk about Moon.
We could. We absolutely
we
could.
could revisit Moon next week, maybe, because it's sci-fi and Brian's a nerd as well, so I'm sure he'll be into it.
And I haven't seen it, so it's an excuse to watch one I haven't
Actually,
seen.
to watch it, yeah. And do you know what? It's crap though, because the UK and Irish Netflix doesn't have. You see all these movies getting promoted. Oh, no, new to Netflix on like whatever the American site. Deadly.
Yeah, and then they're not being added to the Irish one. That kills me as well. I know exactly what you're talking
It's
about.
not great at all, is it?
Not ideal.
Not ideal.
We live in an imperfect society.
That's very true, Dave. He's quite deep this week, isn't he?
Very philosophical.
Yeah. You spread those philosophical wings. Just don't have an existential crisis. We need you to record stuff.
Okay.
There we are now. Dee, thanks. Thanks to Charlotte Reid in production. Thanks to producer Dave. Before we go, can we just, if Charlotte wouldn't mind, can we just show that new John Wick image? There we go. Thanks, Mel, for that. See you next week.